The 1980s, a time of social and political change and cautious optimism for many Americans. The country in this decade set new precedents for politics in the form of an energetic former actor turned president. New media forms encouraged brave and pioneering advances in many different aspects of society. However, the grim specter of war with the USSR loomed over most of the decade. These tensions would eventually lead to breakthroughs, but not without trial and error on both sides of the world. Many new challenges were introduced to common Americans through areas rarely seen before, and America had to find new ways of dealing with them, and in doing so, grew as a nation in this decade. Despite all these important events, the first big event of the 1980s took place in a galaxy far, far away.
No, I am your father. No.
After fans were blown away with the blockbuster hit Star Wars in 1977, everyone was highly anticipating its next installment. Fortunately for the franchise, The Empire Strikes Back managed to make Star Wars and George Lucas even more widely acclaimed and rich. Around $33 million was put into the budget for this movie, with some of this money coming from George Lucas' personal pocket with profits from the previous movie. Lucas's ride would end up paying off the movie gross almost $11 million on its opening weekend alone. The epic story of the heroic rebels led by Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker and evil forces of the Empire under the command of the Emperor and his aide Darth Vader became a hit with movie-going audiences. Lucas would then follow up the success of Empire with Return of the Jedi in 1983. This movie would continue the craze and cement for the Star Wars franchise, and as an enduring and important part of American film culture. We now go from discussing a galaxy far, far away to discussing a truly surprising and shocking event that rocked the security of the American people to its core.
The date is May 18th, 1980. On this quiet Sunday morning, citizens all across America are getting ready and many are preparing for church. However, if you woke up that morning in the Washington state area, you would wake to reports of an apocalyptic catastrophe. Mount St. Helens had just erupted.
The eruption came as a shock to most Americans, as the volcano had been dormant for around 50 years. The eruption was started by a large earthquake agitating the mountain, causing it to spew ash, rock, and magma out of it onto the surrounding area. The ash from the eruption spread to cover 11 states. Researchers, noticing strange activity with the mountain beforehand, were able to shut off access to the area and therefore save countless lives. However, the eruption managed to take the lives of 57 Americans as well as countless animals. The eruption came as a shock to many Americans, but this was just an opener to a decade that would provide many surprises. Now we move from a natural catastrophe to a national tragedy as the nation mourned the loss of a true visionary.
After ending a tape mixing session for an upcoming album, pioneer musician and former member of the Beatles John Lennon left Record Plant Studio, but little did he know who was waiting for him outside.
The former Beatle, who was 40, was hit by several bullets as he and his wife Yoko Ono were returning from a recording studio. It was shortly before 11 o'clock last night, and they just left their car to enter the luxury Dakota apartment block on New York's west side. Police said Lennon was shot by David Chapman, aged 25, after an argument over an autograph.
Mark David Chapman, a security guard from Hawaii that had grown an obsession with Lennon's career and his musical expressions. Chapman declared that Lennon's remark of the Beatles being so, quote, larger than Jesus, end quote, had angered him, who was a mentally disturbed Reformed Christian. Chapman walked up to Lennon and shot 7 bullets into his back. And after stumbling to the ground, Lennon soon died.
Lennon was the most influential musician to me. He touched my heart with his music, and when I heard he died, I cried for an hour straight.
Fans of his work were heartbroken by the terrible news, and many fans got together to perform silent vigils to honor his work and what he stood up for in life. Musicians since then have often honored and looked to John Lennon as a source of inspiration and as a proponent for world peace.
At the end of the 1970s, a political revolution in Iran saw the deposition of the American-supported Shah and the rise of the new Ayatollah Khomeini. The new leader made little effort to hide his anti-American sentiments, and neither did his people. The citizens of Iran believed that America and the CIA had been interfering politically and economically in Iran's affairs for too long. The tensions boiled over when Iranians overran the American embassy in Tehran and held 52 Americans hostage. The president at the time, Jimmy Carter, tried and failed several times to retrieve the hostages from Iran. This led to many Americans finding Carter to be weak and unable to lead the country competently. It was not until the new president's first day in 1981 that the hostages were released and flown back to the U.S., allowing many worried family members and concerned Americans a sigh of relief. While the major credit for saving the hostages was for Carter and his administration, the release of the hostages made Ronald Reagan an instant success with the American people, and his likability proceeded throughout most of the decade.
By the time of the 1980s presidential election, America was looking for a strong yet relatable candidate that could give the promise of restoring America to its former glory. Ronald Reagan was the perfect choice for Americans that cried for a wholesome yet powerful leader. Reagan got his start in the public eye by acting and hosting several TV shows such as General Electric Theater and Death Valley Days. His acting career contributed to his relatable nature and made the average American truly believe that he would do what is best for the country. Reagan won in 44 states that election and was sworn into his office on January 20, 1981. Early in his campaign, Reagan survived an assassination attempt, which helped him gain approval in the form of sympathizers. Reagan's simple way to follow economic policies and advanced speech techniques helped him gain a second term in office. Ronald Reagan came to represent the American way during the 1980s, as perpetuated by the ideas of American hard work and bravery in the face of adversity.
President Reagan had a way of making us feel like we actually mattered, and that he always kept America's interests in his heart.
On the day of August 1st, 1981, a new channel was introduced that opened with a montage of the moon landing with music over it. This channel was named MTV, or Music Television, and it would change the way that teenagers in the 1980s listened to music. MTV's original purpose was to show music videos, which were revolutionary videos that went along with songs, and which let the listener connect with the music and the artist on a level rarely seen before. VJs were introduced to host shows that displayed these music videos. MTV helped the success of several 80s stars such as Madonna and the king of pop, Michael Jackson. Young Americans loved the idea of being able to see and hear their favorite singers, and you weren't considered hip unless you had seen the last music countdown.
When I was growing up, every day coming home from school, I'd relax with my feet up on the couch, watching the latest music video from Michael or Duran Duran. There was nothing else like it back then.
We now turn to a movement that grew throughout the decade and helped advance American society towards peace and unity regarding every human being, no matter what you believed in. The 1980s saw many important advances in the causes of the gay community. In 1982, over 1,000 athletes gathered in San Francisco for the first ever Gay Olympics. This meeting of athletes helped promote understanding and tolerance between the gay and straight community. Another landmark occasion was the election of Gary Sturz, an openly gay man, to Congress for 2 terms. That very next year, breakthrough research revealed that the little-known HIV virus was the probable cause of AIDS, a disease that affected and killed many members of both the gay and straight community. To help promote awareness about the deadly AIDS epidemics, around 300,000 gay and lesbian Americans marched in the National March of Washington for lesbian and gay rights. Soon after this, more and more amounts of money were donated to help research a cure for AIDS. Legislative acts by cities like Baltimore and states like Massachusetts passed bills that protected gays and lesbians from different types of discrimination. All of these actions showed America's willingness to embrace their modern ideas and to remove the archaic and divisive ways of the past.
The year is 1984, and the city of Los Angeles is alight with excitement and hope. The Summer Olympics is being held in America this year, and many Americans are looking to showcase their pride in their nation by bringing home medals.
The Olympics was the topic of the town for a whole year before the event. Everyone was so happy that we got to host, and we were eager to show the rest of the world what we were made of.
However, this Olympics got to a rough start when the USSR and 13 other members of the Eastern Bloc nations refused to come to the Olympics. This decision came as a result of a boycott led by America on the 1980 Moscow Olympics. While many were disappointed with the relatively high number of absent nations, the ceremonies proceeded and the U.S. managed to take home a fair amount of accolades. Mary Lou Retton gained popularity when she brought the gold ribbon in the all-around gymnastics activity. Also, many rising basketball stars like Michael Jordan and Patrick Ewing made up the American basketball team that won gold at the Olympics.
We now transfer from American success to an American tragedy. In 1986, students sat down in class and prepared to watch the launch of the new space shuttle Challenger live on television.
First I thought it had been some sort of mistake, but then I looked at my teacher, Mrs. Garner, and I saw her whisper, "Oh God," and I knew something was wrong.
Their amazement turned into shock and horror when they witnessed the shuttle break down and crash into Earth just 73 seconds into its flight. All 7 crew members were killed in the crash, including Christian McAuliffe, a school teacher who was nominated to go into space after winning a competition with a trip to space as a prize. Later studies indicated that the crash was caused by a critical failure in the O-ring of the shuttle, allowing hot gas to leak in and interfere with the normal conditions that could have kept the shuttle stable. Many Americans felt the great loss of the crew.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd planned to speak to you tonight to report on the State of the Union. But the events of earlier today have led me to change those plans.
And even Ronald Reagan postponed his State of the Union address that was supposed to take place that night in order to issue a tribute to the brave members that died trying to push the limits of what the US was capable of doing in space.
In 1989, Germany felt a wind of change. Many people felt that soon the country would be reunited once again, after nearly 40 years of separation. This change was greatly facilitated when Ronald Reagan came to Germany in 1987 for the 750th anniversary of Berlin and delivered his famous Brandenburg speech. Talks of peace were first brought on after the little-known Able Archer incident of 1983. This was when a NATO military exercise prompted a buildup of Russian weapons and troops that caused NATO to do the same. The two sides were at the brink of war for 10 tense days, and when the crisis ended, both sides realized that negotiations should be met before the Cold War ended all of humanity. In this famous speech, Reagan challenged the current leader of the USSR, Mikhail Gorbachev, to tear down the Berlin Wall that separated the east parts of Berlin, as well as several Eastern European countries, from the western parts of Berlin and Western European countries. Reagan felt that in order to work towards a peaceful coexistence between the East and West, all barriers separating the two must be destroyed. In 1989, his wish was fulfilled. The Eastern German government ordered the demolition of many parts of the wall, and overjoyed East Berliners hurried to reunite with their brethren in the West. The demolition of the Berlin Wall ended the decade of the 1980s on a positive note, as Americans saw that, with enough work and understanding, peace between the two great powers could be achieved, to an extent.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Strength. Weakness. Success. Failure. The 1980s was a decade of extreme presence and importance in America. America asserted its tough attitude, and that helped gain an even greater presence as a major world power. Economic stability allowed investments in intellectual advances as well as media and technology. A strong leader gave Americans the confidence needed to succeed. America left the 1980s with the confidence to keep the progress, and with the innovations as well as the courage to make it through tough times, although tough times would still rise in a new decade.
I, for one, am glad I was able to grow up in such an interesting time, a time of great change and progress, but also great challenge and difficulty. Looking back, even the bad parts of the 1980s are what helped make it such an interesting time to be an American.
All right, that sounds good. Yeah. Woo, we did this.